Today we will be dealing with the basics of economics, that is microeconomics, the concepts and their applications. Microeconomics. Microeconomics is that branch of economics that deals with individual units or smaller units. Individual or small units. On the contrary, we also have another branch of economics that deals with bigger units and aggregates, that is macroeconomics. So macroeconomics deals with aggregates or bigger units. Examples of microeconomics would be income of one person, profit of a firm, etc. When it comes to macroeconomics, examples would be GDP of a country, national income of a country, net tax collected in a country in a year, etc. So microeconomics is that branch of economics that deals with smaller units or individual units. Macroeconomics, economy as a whole or aggregates in the economy. In this session, we will be dealing with microeconomics. So let us start with some important concepts in microeconomics. The first one is demand. Demand means the willingness of a consumer to buy a particular product backed up by the ability to buy that particular product at certain price. So, demand is willingness of a consumer to buy a particular product backed up by ability to buy that particular product. So, willingness plus ability would give you, willingness plus ability will give you demand. What is willingness? Willingness means the wish for it. You are willing to buy it. And what is ability? Ability means you should have the money to buy it. The monetary ability. That is ability here. So, willingness plus ability would give you demand. And if we take this ability separately and see what is the relationship between this ability and demand. Let us see. So, ability means money. That is price of the commodity. So, P and quantity demanded, that is demand, how much quantity you are demanding. Let us see what is the relationship. So when price increases, the quantity demanded would come down, and when price decreases, the quantity demanded would go up. So we can say that there is a negative or inverse relationship between the quantity demanded of a particular commodity and the price of that particular commodity. So this inverse relationship or negative relationship can be termed as the law of demand. The law of demand states that there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of a particular commodity. That is, when price increases, quantity demanded comes down, and when price decreases, quantity demanded goes up. This inverse relationship is termed as the law of demand. Now let us try to graphically represent this law of demand. Let us take price P on the y-axis and quantity demanded QD on the x-axis. Suppose the price is rupees 10, that is the price is minimum. So according to the law of demand, when the price is minimum, the quantity demanded would be maximum. So at price P, that is rupees 10, so at price rupees 10, the quantity demanded would be maximum. So let us assume it is 40. Okay. Now the price has increased to 20 from rupees 10. So what would happen to the quantity demanded? The quantity demanded would also come down. Let us say the quantity demanded is 30 now. Again the price has increased to 30, and now the quantity demanded has again decreased, and say now it is 15. So here we got 3 points at 3 price levels. So at rupees 10 we have got this point, at rupees 20 we have got this point, and at rupees 30 we have got this point. So if we join these 3 points, we would get a downward sloping curve, and this curve is known as the demand curve, which we represent as DD. This is the demand curve. Now let us see what are the features of this demand curve. The first feature of the demand curve is that it is a downward sloping curve. It is a downward sloping curve. We can see it from the figure. The second feature of this demand curve is that it shows an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. That is, when price increases, quantity demanded decreases and vice versa. So we can learn an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded from this demand curve. The third feature is that the proportion of change in price and quantity demanded need not be the same. Let us take the third price, that is 30. So here we see that the price has increased from 20 to 30. But what has happened? Here the quantity demanded has decreased from 30 to 15. So here we understand that the proportion of change in price and the proportion of change in quantity demanded is not the same. So here we see that the proportion of change in price and the change in quantity demanded is not the same. We will discuss this concept in detail when we learn about elasticity, that is price elasticity of demand. When we learn price elasticity of demand, we will discuss this concept elaborately. We have seen demand, the law of demand, and the demand curve, that is the graphical representation of law of demand. Now let us see what are the determinants of demand. The first and the most important determinant of demand is price. Price of a commodity determines how much quantity to be demanded. We have already seen this in the law of demand. So when price increases, quantity demanded decreases, and when price decreases, quantity demanded increases. This is the most important determinant of demand. The second important determinant of demand is income of a consumer. In economics, we denote income by Y. So, when income of a consumer increases, the quantity demanded also increases. And when income of a consumer comes down, the quantity demanded also comes down. So we can say that there is a direct relationship between income of a consumer and the quantity demanded of a particular commodity. And there is an exception to this rule, that is inferior goods. Inferior goods refers to those goods whose demand increases with a decrease in the income and whose demand decreases with an increase in the income. So inferior goods, when income increases, the demand would come down, and when income decreases, the demand would go up. It is an exception to this rule. So what can be examples of inferior goods then? Example is ration rice. So when you have more income, you would consume less of ration rice, and when you have less income, you would consume more of ration rice. So such type of goods can be said as inferior goods. Next determinant of demand is price of related goods. Related goods can be divided into two. One is substitutes, second one is complementary goods. Let us see what is a substitute. Substitute means one good can be used instead of another. Example is tea and coffee. So let us see what happens to the demand of coffee when the price changes in case of tea. So let us think that the price of tea has increased. Price of tea has increased. So the quantity demanded of coffee would increase. Why? The price of tea has increased. So now people would prefer to have more coffee, because now tea is more costly. So when price of one substitute good increases, the demand of its substitute would increase. So that is a relationship between substitute goods. Now let us see complementary goods. Example, pen and refill. Suppose the price of pen has increased. What would happen to the demand of refill? Demand of refill would come down because they are complementary goods. Complementary goods means those goods which has to be used together. They cannot be used separately. So without pen you cannot use the refill. So when the price of pen increases, the quantity demanded of refill would come down. So in case of complementary goods, when the price of one good increases, the demand of the other, that is the demand of the complementary good, would come down. There are also some other factors that determine the demand of a commodity. That is weather, taste and preferences of the consumer, seasonal factors, etc. Now let us see another important concept, that is Utility. Utility refers to the psychological satisfaction that you derive from consuming a particular commodity. It is the psychological satisfaction. Utility is the psychological satisfaction that you derive out of consuming a particular commodity. It is the want satisfying power of a commodity. And in utility, let us see three important concepts, that is marginal utility, total utility and the law of diminishing marginal utility. Let us see one by one. Before we go into these three concepts, let us take an example. Suppose on a sunny day, you have gone out and you had to walk a very long distance and you feel very tired. You entered a shop, you ordered for 1 glass of lime juice. 1 glass of lime juice. You consumed that 1 glass of lime juice. Since you are very tired, you felt very happy and relaxed after consuming 1 glass of lime juice. So let us assume that you got maximum satisfaction out of consuming that glass of lime juice. So let us assume that satisfaction as 100 units. The first glass gave you 100 units of satisfaction. 1 glass was not enough. You consumed the second glass. Do you think you have got the same level of satisfaction from your second glass as from your first glass? No, of course not. You would have got lesser level of satisfaction. Let us take it as 70 units. Okay. Again, you have ordered for a third glass of lime juice which gave you only 30 units of satisfaction. Okay. Now let us see. The concepts one by one. First one is marginal utility. What is marginal utility? First unit gave you 100 units of satisfaction. Second unit gave you 70 units of satisfaction. So the difference between the first and the second unit is marginal utility. That is, the difference between the present unit and the previous unit would give you marginal utility. Here it is minus 30. The second concept is total utility. All the three units together, 100 plus 70 plus 30, that is 200 units. That is total utility. Total utility means the total satisfaction that you have derived from consuming the given units of a particular commodity. That is total utility. And the most important concept here is the law of diminishing marginal utility. So here from this example, you will see that the first unit gave you maximum, the second unit gave you lesser satisfaction, third unit lesser, and if you would have consumed the fourth unit, it would have definitely given you a lesser satisfaction than the third unit. So as the consumption goes on, you would be getting lesser and lesser levels of satisfaction. And this is what you call as the law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility states that when you consume more of a commodity or when you consume additional units of a particular commodity, the satisfaction that you tend to derive out of it would be lesser than the previous unit. This concept is known as the law of diminishing marginal utility. And this law is applicable to almost everything in the universe except a few commodities like money, alcohol, etc. Let us now see another important concept in microeconomics, that is supply. Supply refers to various quantities of a commodity which are offered for sale by firms at particular price. So supply is the quantities of a commodity which are offered by a firm at a particular price. So quantity, firm and price. Now let us see the law of supply as we have seen the law of demand. Now let us see the law of supply. Let us see what is the relationship between price and the quantity supplied. When price increases, the quantity supplied also increases, and when price decreases, the quantity supplied also decreases. Why? Because supply is from the point of view of a firm. So when price increases, the firm would maximize their supply in order to maximize their profit. And when the price is less, the firms will not be willing to sell maximum commodities as the profit also would go down. So we can say that there is a direct relationship between the price of a commodity and quantity supplied. This direct relationship between price and the quantity supplied is known as law of supply. That is, when price increases, quantity supplied also increases, and when price decreases, quantity supplied also decreases. Let us try to graphically represent this law of supply. Price in the y-axis and quantity supplied QS in the x-axis. So, in the law of supply, we have seen that when price increases, quantity supplied also increases, and when price decreases, the quantity supplied also decreases. So, here let us take price as 10. So, when price is less, quantity supplied is also less. So, quantity supplied 10. Price increased to 20, the quantity supplied increased to 20. Again the price increased to 30, the quantity supplied increased to 35. Here also we get 3 points at 3 price levels. And if we join these 3 points, we would get a upward sloping curve. And this we call as the supply curve or the SS. Now let us see what are the features of this supply curve. The first feature of the supply curve is that it is a upward sloping curve. We can see from the figure that it is a upward sloping curve. The second feature of this supply curve is that it shows a direct relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity supplied of that commodity. That is, when price increases, the quantity supplied also increases, and when price comes down, the quantity supplied also comes down. The third feature of the supply curve is that the proportion of the change in price need not be equal to the change in quantity supplied. That is, here at the second price level it was 20, and when it increased to 30, we can see that the quantity supplied increased from 20 to 35. So this proportion and this is not equal. Here it was 10 rupees and here it is 15 units. So the proportion of change in price and quantity supplied need not be the same. And this concept also we will discuss in detail when we learn about elasticity. Now let us see what are the determinants of supply. The first and the most important determinant of supply is the same that of demand. That is the price. In the law of supply, we have seen that there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. So when price increases, quantity supplied also increases, and when price comes down, quantity supplied also comes down. So there is a direct relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. The second determinant of supply is cost of production. When cost of production of a firm goes up, what would happen to the supply? Quantity supplied would come down, because now the cost is more, the producer is only able to sell lesser goods. When cost of production increases, the quantity supplied comes down. Why? Because when the cost of production is more, the producer is able to produce only lesser goods. So when cost of production increases, quantity supplied comes down, and when cost of production decreases, quantity supplied increases, because the producer is able to produce more goods now. Cost of production can be anything like the rent, the cost of the raw materials, the wages, etc. Third important determinant of supply is taxes, or the rate of change in taxes. When taxes increases, what would happen to the cost of production? When taxes increases, cost of production also would increase, which would result in lesser supply and vice versa. Next determinant of supply is change in technology. When there is an improvement in the technology, the supply would increase because now the production is also more. These are the important determinants of supply. Now let us see another important concept in microeconomics, that is market equilibrium. Market equilibrium is a situation where the aggregate demand in the market is equal to the aggregate supply in the market. That is, it is a point at which the quantity demanded in a market is equal to the quantity supplied in a market. That is QD equal to QS. So, when aggregate demand is equal to the aggregate supply in the market, we call that point as market equilibrium. Let us see it in a graph. Price P on the y-axis and quantity Q in the x-axis. This is the demand curve DD. This is the supply curve SS. So this point is known as the equilibrium point. That is, the supply, here the supply curve and the demand curve has met in this point, and this point is known as equilibrium. We call the equilibrium point as E. We denote it as E. So this is equilibrium. The quantity demanded in a market equal to the quantity supplied. Equilibrium E. Next is a very interesting and important concept, that is the market mechanism to maintain equilibrium. Market mechanism. Let us see what is this market mechanism. So market mechanism of equilibrium says that the market will always try to maintain equilibrium in the market. That is, the quantity demanded will always be equal to the quantity supplied in the market. Do you think so? Can the market always maintain the equilibrium? Can the demand and the supply in the market be always the same? And how does this market try to maintain this equilibrium? Let us see it through a graph. Price, quantity, demand curve DD, supply curve SS, equilibrium point E. At equilibrium point E, the price is P and the quantity is Q. Now, let us take a new point, that is P1. Let us assume that the price has increased to P1. You must remember that when we learn about the market mechanism to maintain equilibrium, we consider the demand curve. So, when price increased to P1, what would happen to the demand of the commodity? In the law of demand, we have learned that when price increases, the quantity demanded would come down. So, when price increased to P1, the quantity demanded decreased to Q1 and the new equilibrium point is here. That is E1. So, the price has increased to P1. It was P. From P it increased to P1, and when the price increased, the quantity demanded has decreased, and now the quantity demanded is Q1 and the new equilibrium point is E1. So P1, E1 and Q1. Let us take another point, that is P2. Assuming that the price has decreased. So the price has decreased to P2. So when price decreases, we have learned in the law of demand that the quantity demanded would increase. So this is the point in the demand curve and this is Q2. So at price P2, the quantity demanded is Q2 and the new equilibrium point is E2. So E2 is the new equilibrium point when price is P2. So let us see. The price here is P1. At price P1, what has happened? The quantity demanded has decreased from Q to Q1. So the supply is here till here. So see this space. This triangle is excess supply. Why? Because the supply is constant. There is a concept in economics known as ceteris paribus. This concept says that when one variable changes, all others remain the same. So here we see that the price has increased to P1. So demand has changed due to an increase in the price. Demand has come down. But supply is remaining constant. Supply is constant and supply would be till this point. Supply is till this point. So this triangle, this area of this triangle is excess supply. Since price has increased, demand has come down. So this point, this space is excess supply, this triangle. And let us see the second case. Here the price has decreased to P2. So at P2 the quantity demanded is Q2 and the supply has remained the same. So supply is only till this point. And this triangle, the area of this triangle, it is shortage of supply. Why? Because when price has come down, the quantity demanded has gone up, but the supply has remained constant. So this triangle area would be shortage of supply. In the first case, that is P, we have seen that here aggregate demand, P aggregate demand equal to aggregate supply. But when it comes to P1, that is the price has increased, what has happened? Aggregate supply is more than aggregate demand. And when it comes to P2, that is price has come down, aggregate supply is less than aggregate demand. These are the Three conditions. 1, 2 and 3. So let us see. In the first case, everything is perfectly fine because aggregate demand and supply is the same. In the second case, the price has increased. So what has happened? When price has increased, demand came down and supply is remaining constant. So there is an excess of supply. The producers somehow want to sell their commodities. They don't want to keep it with themselves. So when they have an excess of their produce, what they would do? They would try to sell it in the market by reducing the prices. So at P1, what the producers will do? They will try to reduce the price in order to sell the commodities. So the price will come down. And in case of P2, what would happen? The price has come down, so the quantity demanded is more. So we see that at P2, what is the case? P2, aggregate supply is less than the aggregate demand. That means there is excess demand in the market. So what the producers will do? They will increase the prices. So when price goes more than the equilibrium point, there will be a shortage of demand and supply will be more. So producers will in turn reduce the prices. When price comes down from the equilibrium point, there will be excess of demand, and this will in turn, that is, the market will always try to maintain the equilibrium, that is, aggregate demand and aggregate supply same. So what is market mechanism? It is an automatic process through which the market tries to maintain equilibrium in the market with the help of demand and supply factors. And this market mechanism is also known as invisible hand. The term invisible hand was first coined by the father of economics, Adam Smith, in his book, An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations.